Welcome everyone to the special remote commission meeting of September 7th, 2021. Normally we have a work session on this date, but today we're having a special remote commission meeting due to the items on the agenda. So the Port of Olympia is working diligently to address the threat posed by COVID-19 to Thurston County, the state of Washington, and the United States. On March 16, 2020, the Commission adopted Resolution 2020-03, authorizing certain emergency powers in light of the COVID-19 outbreak, including invoking applicable emergency exemptions to meeting notice requirements of the and location restrictions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Pursuant to that resolution, the Port of Olympia Commission is conducting today's meeting remotely. The Port is following the guidance from Thurston County Health Department to take all efforts to prevent the spread of this virus and is acting in the interest of the safety and welfare of the public, the community, and our employees to limit its spread. So for those of you that are curious, we did have an executive session shortly before this meeting. We convened at 2:30 p.m. and we ended the executive session at 10 after 3. That executive session was to discuss potential litigation in accordance with RCW 42.30.110, paragraph I. The executive session, as I mentioned, lasted about 40 minutes. So here we are with our special remote commission meeting. Felicia, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today?
Yes, Commissioner, I would. Before I do that, I'd also note that no decisions were made by the Commission during the executive session.
Thank you. Thank you, Felicia.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with justice and liberty for all.
Thank you, Felicia. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? I second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you, commissioners. So we have one item under the action other calendar entitled Resolution 2021-05, Emergency Powers in Response to the Outbreak of COVID-19. And our own Felicia Brown will be presenting. Hi, Felicia.
Hello, Commissioner. Thank you. So what I have before you today is a resolution regarding port employee COVID-19 requirements. There's a draft resolution in the packet as well as the PowerPoint that I'm going to go through. Next slide, please. The port has an obligation to ensure a safe working environment for its employees and to ensure the continuity of business operations. Accordingly, on March 16th, 2020, the Port Commission passed Resolution 2020-03, authorizing emergency powers in response to the outbreak of COVID-19. The resolution before you today would require COVID-19 vaccinations or weekly COVID-19 testing for all port employees through the duration of the current state of emergency, pursuant to the emergency powers authorized in Resolution 2020-03. As you all know, the recent Delta variant is having a negative impact on COVID-19 infections. Thurston County is considered a high disease activity county, and it's at the highest rate of positivity since the beginning of the pandemic. As of August 30th, 2021, more than 4.7 million Washingtonians, which is about 73% of those eligible, approximately 62% of the total population, had initiated the vaccine series, leaving nearly 1.8 million eligible Washingtonians unvaccinated. And as of August 25th, 2021, 51.7% of Thurston County's total population was vaccinated. And it is the duty of every employer to protect the health and safety of employees by establishing and maintaining a healthy and safe work environment and requiring all employees to comply with health and safety measures. Next slide, please. This resolution would essentially require that vaccinated employees have multiple ways to submit evidence of their vaccination status. Those three ways would be their CDC vaccination card, documentation from a healthcare professional, or the information that they receive, like a printout from the state immunization information system record. However, in lieu of vaccination, employees would be able to submit a negative COVID test weekly. Within the resolution, you will see language that permits, similarly to Resolution 2020-03, the Port Executive Director to adopt a temporary policy or procedures related to COVID-19 to enact this resolution and cover related issues, including leave usage. While it's not on the slide, this also pertains to programs such as incentive programs that would allow employees to receive any type of incentive that the port staff were able to come up with regarding getting the vaccine. And it would also extend to the protocols that would go in place for weekly testing. This resolution would be effective for the duration of the state of emergency. Next slide, please. And on this slide, we have a sample motion. I don't remember if we actually read these. You think I haven't done it that many times, but I will read it for you just so that we have that done. The sample motion would say, I move to adopt and approve resolution number 2021-05, which is a resolution of the Port of Olympia Commission requiring COVID-19 vaccination or weekly COVID-19 testing for port employees pursuant to the emergency powers granted in response to the outbreak of COVID-19 by resolution number 2020-03. Next slide, please. At this time, myself and my colleagues are available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Felicia. Commissioners, I think we should go round robin on this. And I'm sure you have questions or concerns. So Commissioner Zita or Commissioner McGregor, would you like to start?
Commissioner McGregor, start, please.
Okay, I'll take the opportunity. Thank you, Commissioner. A couple of things in background on this, that we know that Thurston County has passed a vaccination or a testing requirement of their employees. The PUD is requiring or mandating that all employees be vaccinated. Lot is within 90% compliance of complete vaccination. Intercity has an interesting one because under federal guidelines, some of the staff needs to be vaccinated, others could be vaccinated and or testing of others. I'm not sure how all that is. Although we have federal monies that come in for the airport, we're under no requirement at this time for federal requirement anyway. I think that, we're hearing more and more just in the last few days, the Delta variant, and now we're hearing about a Wu variant that is starting to show up. And I think in 49 states it's shown up. I think Nebraska was the only one that hadn't reported a Wu variant, whatever that is. But I think it's as the variants come out, they become more violent, if I can use that, more intrusive, I guess, and cause more complications. But we have a duty here to meet the safety of our employees. But I think we also have a duty to allow them to make a choice. They can either vaccinate or not vaccinated. And I think this resolution will indicate that if they choose not to vaccinate, then there's additional requirements that are going to have to be done. If they do vaccinate, then that they just have to show proof of that. So I think we have a duty and a responsibility to our employees as the employer to provide a safe working environment. And so I think it's justifiable and necessary to move forward with this, to put a policy in place. And I think that policy needs to come from the commission. And I think staff has done a good job of putting it together at this point. I'll leave it at that for now and maybe have a few comments later if I might.
Thank you, Commissioner McGregor. Commissioner Zita.
So I want to thank staff for presenting this proposal. I agree with Commissioner McGregor. COVID is a serious issue, and our local jurisdictions and our state are doing their part to ensure the safety of their workers and of our community. And the port should also step up and do our part. This resolution is appropriate, requiring staff to be vaccinated, and if they choose not to be vaccinated, requiring staff to be tested weekly. I appreciate that staff have been very accommodating, and I trust that staff will continue to be very accommodating in providing time off for people to get vaccinated. Whether or not time off is provided for testing, we'll leave that up to our staff. That'll be an operational detail. Maybe we would like to provide incentives for staff in addition to the time off. That's an operational detail that we'll leave up to staff. But I agree, this is something we need to do. Everybody else around us is doing it, and it's especially critical right now in Thurston County. There were 400 and some cases per week when this resolution was drafted. Last week, that number was even higher, over 700 cases in Thurston County last week. So COVID is accelerating rapidly in our community. And to protect the vulnerable, the kids under 12 who can't get vaccinated, those who are immunocompromised, and others, we need to do our part. And thank you, staff, for bringing this to us.
Thank you, Commissioner Zita. You know, I share 100% share staff's concern and the concern that Commissioner Zita and McGregor have put forth in terms of the deadliness of COVID-19, the deadliness of the first version, the deadliness of the new variant, and a new variant yet to come, about to come out. So, you know, it's a really serious deal. And I wish I could talk to, you know, every employee that has not been vaccinated and ask them, you know, what their motivation is for not getting vaccinated. But I can't really do that. I do, however, feel that the state government is going to have a problem when it comes October 18th, and they've got a large portion of their workforce that has not yet been vaccinated. What are they going to do? So, you know, we need state government, we need the employees, but we also need a safe working environment. So, you know, I really think this is a vexing problem. And I guess there's some other things that I'd like to do, you know, before we pass this resolution. I'm not saying we shouldn't pass it, but I think that I think we have not exhausted the other methods to get the vaccination rate to where we'd like it to be. I'm not sure we'll ever get to 100% nationwide, countywide, or locally, but people have talked about herd immunity when the vaccination rate gets to such a point where it's a manageable health crisis. So those four things that I'd like to see happen before we institute this particular resolution the way it's written. One is I'd like to study the lot agency, which has about as many employees as we do, if not more, and figure out why they're at 90% vaccination rate. What did they do to get to that point? Is it just luck? I think not. You know, I think that they did proactive measures to get to 90%. Two, I'd like to, with the commission's permission, and you know, we'll get to this, circle back to this later, is for the commission to write a letter to staff urging them to get vaccinated. And third, I'd like to provide some sort of financial incentive. I've been told that any incentive you provide to unvaccinated employees to get vaccinated, you'd have to apply that to every vaccinated employee at the port. But so be it, because you know, a few $1,000s is small potatoes compared to the discord we have created by having two classes of employees, vaccinated and unvaccinated, and plus the bigger issues that might stem from the situation. And lastly, I'd like a voluntary list of persons that are vaccinated to be published and posted in each office of the port, so that those voluntary people who are proud of being vaccinated and then have some sort of safeguard when they know that somebody walks into their office and they're not on the list, therefore they're not vaccinated probably. And, you know, I know that in my daily life, you know, I stay away from I stay further distance from people that are unmasked, for example. I was in, where was I? In the grocery store earlier today. And when you come across somebody that's unmasked, you automatically give them not 6 foot, but 12 foot of distance. So I think there's things, those 4 things we can do before we move to the step of requiring people to be vaccinated or else weekly testing. And then I've had conversations with court staff about equity. Well, when you talk about equity, why have only the unvaccinated get weekly testing? Why not get everybody weekly testing as of that deadline? So there's a lot of reasons to things to explore. I mean, and I think we should explore those things, quickly, because this is an urgent health crisis for all of us. So that's where I stand on this issue. Commissioner Zita or McGregor, any further thoughts?
Yeah, Commissioner Zita, go ahead if you have something, and I just have a couple of additional comments.
Well, Commissioner Downing, I'm glad you agree with the suggestion that we consider offering an incentive to staff for being vaccinated. And yes, all staff who are vaccinated should get the incentive, even if they were vaccinated earlier. I think it's a great idea to study lot and see why they are at 90%. And I agree it's a good idea for the commission to write a letter. None of those things need to happen before we pass this resolution. Those are all operational details, and we can do those after passing the resolution. As for posting a voluntary list of those vaccinated, I strongly advise against that, but I will leave that up to our staff leadership. That's another operational detail.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of creating a list either, even if it's voluntary. I just think that tends to put another divide in the staff. But I will say this, I reflect back on a year and a half ago, we had the initial COVID nightmare and the shutdown of everything, the tightening of our community, the tightening of our development. The small businesses were severely impacted. Some never came back from it. I'd hate to see that happening, but you're starting to see people tighten things down. Just today, I read that the Seahawks will only allow COVID card-carrying vaccinated fans. They have to show it to get in. I think the Mariners, some of the colleges are also doing the same thing. And so we're starting to see them tighten down on who can get in and who cannot. And I don't attend those games. Once in a while I might, but it doesn't matter. But they're starting to tighten down and turn, I don't want to say turn the screws, but tighten the screws on who can get in and who can't. So I just think we need to be aware of it. I think that, they've tried several incentives and I'll name a couple of them. Jab for a joint, the state or somebody did that. And then of course we had the $1 million lottery. Anybody that got their COVID vaccination was entered into the lottery. And so they've tried different things to try to incentivize doing this. And I just think that we need to create a safe workplace for all of our employees, whether it be vaccinated or unvaccinated. We still need to give them the choice. And if you make this choice, this is what happens. If you make this choice, that is what needs to happen to provide a safe workplace. So I did have a question for Valicia, if I could. On slide 3, one of the bullets, if you could go back to slide 3. Well, it would be the third from the bottom. It says in lieu of vaccination, a negative COVID test can be submitted weekly. I think that should be must be submitted weekly. I don't think that that's a can is kind of, well, if you do it, you do it. So I just think we need to emphasize the fact that it must be a weekly thing, depending on how you set up the program. So I just wanted to point that out. But thank you for bringing this forward.
Commissioner McGregor, you're right. It would be a requirement if you were not vaccinated. So it should actually say must be. You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I would like to add while the commissioners are still discussing is that the 4 alternatives or ideas that Commissioner Downing had, I would just like to add everybody's kind of as they're going through their brains with it, they would all be necessary to be reviewed kind of for legal compliance with the different regulations and bodies that are out here. All aspects of labor and employment. I would say there's probably 6 governing boards out there in addition to case law and regulations that play at once when you're talking about employees' rights and the requirements that an employer has to follow. Just going to say that there's a lot of things out there that we have to comply with at once that have competing interests. Another thing that I see a lot of right now is that we have diversity, equity, and inclusion. In the last year or so, they've really been hot topics and put into the forefront. And while I think that's a really good idea and that people mean well, I want to make sure that we are not falling into what I've seen is this becoming a vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And people have been thinking that because they're unvaccinated and they're being treated differently, that this is a situation where they're being discriminated against. If you are not an unvaccinated employee, that is not a protected class. And therefore, all of those rules that we have against discrimination do not apply to those who are not vaccinated. And so I want to make sure that when we talk about equity and inclusion, that we are not misclassifying unvaccinated employees as a protected class and therefore thinking that things apply to them that do not.
Thanks, Felicia, and thanks, commissioners, for your questions. Well, if I actually have a related, I'd like to make a motion on a related item, and the motion is this, that the commission authorize the commission president to work with the executive director on a letter to employees on behalf of the Port Commission regarding the urgency of the situation and suggestion of getting a COVID-19 vaccine.
I appreciate you asking, Commissioner Downing. I don't know why you have published other letters this year without consulting us. So is this a new policy?
I don't want to
Thank you,
get in.
Commissioner. Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner McGregor.
I don't want to get into the tit for tat situation we have here. I think this is important enough that we need to move it along. I think that putting a letter out from the commission, all 3 signing it, is appropriate, and making sure we all agree that we are in one voice talking about this difficult subject amongst our employees. So I would be encouraged to have that happen. So anyway, that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Well, does that mean we'll actually see this letter and have input into it before it's published or not?
Well, let me rephrase, commissioners. I'm making a motion, looking for a second. The motion is that the commission president and the executive director work together to draft a letter sent out to all employees regarding the importance of getting a COVID-19 vaccine, and such letter would be representative of the Port Commission as a whole.
So if this letter is to be representative of the Port Commission, does this mean we get to see it before it goes out and offers input or not?
So I actually have a draft of the letter, which is only 2 paragraphs if you'd like me to read it. But again, the motion was that the commission president and the executive director get together and draft a letter to the employees regarding the importance of a COVID-19 vaccine, and that letter be sent on behalf of the Port Commission. That's what I'm looking
So
for.
it sounds like the answer to my question is no, the Port Commission will not be consulted.
Well, Commissioner Zita, let's follow.
I'm just looking for a yes or no here.
Commissioner Zita, if you don't have a second, please be silent or give me a
I'm
second.
asking a question for clarification, Commissioner Downing. It's a yes.
Well, I
or no
answered it
question.
already. And so what we need to do is make a motion and a second, and then we can open it up for discussion.
I don't know why you can't give a yes or no answer to a yes or no question.
Well, because
let's second it. I'll second it for the purposes of discussion. There we go.
Thank you, Commissioner McGregor. So it's been moved and seconded, and Commissioner Zita, for now that we can discuss, because it's time sensitive, and rather than wait for another commission meeting, I've made the motion that I work with the executive director to draft the letter and send it out on behalf of the Port Commission. Now, if you really would rather wait, we have another commission meeting in a week, next Monday. And so we could, you could make a friendly amendment to, for us to draft the letter and bring it to the next commission meeting for action, other action.
So it sounds like the answer to my question is no, you envisioned this as something we would not have input into. And now you're thinking maybe we could.
Can I respond to this?
Go
We
ahead,
have-
Commissioner Berger.
We just recently have the ability to sign letters electronically. And I don't see there's any issue with the chair writing up the letter, sending it out to us electronically so that we can either provide some input, very minimal input. We don't need to get into a long dissertation, but at least giving input back and say, well, what about this or the wording of that? And then it can be sent around again within the next couple of days for complete signature by each commissioner.
That's a great idea, Commissioner McGregor.
I think that shows a unified front for the staff, and I think that we should do that.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'm going to go ahead and withdraw my motion because now it sounds like all three of us are in agreement that a letter be sent out and commissioners offer their responses by, let's just say Friday of this week. And then on Monday, well, we really don't need, then on Monday, we could take action at the next commission meeting because, yeah. How's that sound?
If we're allowed to do scheduling at these meetings, I know I get my hand slapped every time I offer a timeline.
Can
Oh,
we,
good point.
can we just move this along and ask that we have staff put something out as, if you've already got 2 paragraphs already put together, Commissioner, perhaps you can work with the executive director to get that out to us here. By tomorrow, we have to give response back by Friday morning, and it can be sent around for final approval and get it out of here on Friday. We don't need to waste a lot of time, I don't believe, at a commission meeting going back over the details of the letter. I think that we can do this expeditiously and get it in the hands of staff as soon as possible.
I agree with Commissioner McGregor, and I'd like to note that we're setting a precedent here for commission cooperation on a letter from the commission president. And we're also setting a precedent for setting a timeline for our actions at a commission meeting. I'm fully supportive.
Great. Next item of business, anyone?
We need to move
Well, I think
approval or make a motion so that staff has clear direction. And I think Sam had comment as well.
Go ahead, Sam. Sam, you have a comment?
Yes, so I think there are 2 issues here. One is for the letter, but the second one is this is on its action other, and just to remind the chair that we have scheduled for public comment on that issue
Right.
before you actually vote on any type of motion related to the item on the agenda.
Thank you, Sam, for that reminder. So at this moment, I don't have any motions on the table, but I need a motion and a second before we move to public comment, if anyone is interested in making a motion.
So I would move that the chair of the commission and the executive director put a letter together to disseminate amongst staff regarding the action that we probably are going to take here regarding resolution 2021-05. And have that in their hands by Friday night.
Second,
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's been moved and seconded. I'd like to move to public comment on,
I'd like to offer this motion before we move to public comment, right?
one right in front of us.
Yeah,
Commissioner
I
Zita.
move to approve and adopt resolution 2021-05, a resolution of the Port of Olympia Commission requiring COVID-19 vaccination or weekly COVID-19 testing for port employees pursuant to the emergency powers granted in response to the outbreak of COVID-19 by resolution number 2020-03.
Second.
Those
Great.
have been moved and seconded to approve and adopt resolution 2021-05, a resolution of the Port of Olympia Commission requiring COVID-19 vaccination or weekly COVID-19 testing for port employees pursuant to the emergency powers granted in response to the outbreak of COVID-19 by resolution number 2020-03. So for members of the public, we're going to move to public comment on the action other item entitled Emergency Powers in Response to the COVID-19 outbreak of COVID-19. And I bring to the public's attention that's actually two motions that have been moved and seconded on the floor. The first is the approval of the resolution 2021-05, and the other is the motion to create a letter to employees after consultation with port commissioners to be sent out to all employees. So with that, I'm going to move to see if anybody would like to give public comment on either of these items. And I see Ms. Carla Wolfsberg with her hand up. Ms. Wolfsberg, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to address the second, and that is the input of all the commissioners on the letter to the employees. I very strongly support the democratic process. I highly object to any commissioner who would stand in the way of all voices of our elected officials being heard and giving input, especially with the staff of the Port of Olympia. So I would appreciate that very strong belief that the democratic process is important to all of us. So thank you, and I hope that I won't hear any of this obstruction business again at a port meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfsberg. Anybody else like to give public comment on the action other item regarding the COVID-19 resolution? Anybody else? Not seeing any other public comment. Want to move back to the resolution of the motion to approve the resolution 2021-05. Could you pull that up again? Thank you, Tracy. So it's been moved and seconded that the commission approve and adopt resolution number 2021-05, a resolution of the Port of Olympia Commission requiring COVID-19 vaccination or weekly COVID-19 testing for port employees pursuant to the emergency powers granted in response to the outbreak of COVID-19 by resolution number 2020-03. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Nay. Motion passes. The next
Roll call
motion,
vote. Roll call vote in the minutes, please.
next motion is to create a letter to employees after approval from each port commissioner and signed by each port commissioner in consultation with the executive director to be sent out to port employees, emphasizing the importance of getting a vaccination for the health and safety of all port employees. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I have a discussion item. So it's been first and seconded, but I had put some deadlines on there that we have it ready to go Friday afternoon to all employees. They have it in their hands so that, and then the commissioners needed to respond back in a timely manner. So this doesn't need to keep moving forward.
Well, thanks, Commissioner McGregor, but as Commissioner Zita reminded us, we don't necessarily set timelines for the work of staff in port commission meetings. So respectfully call point of order on that one. Did you have a comment on that, Sam?
I just want to raise a concern for review of a work product and some type of what might be an appearance of a serial meeting in a potential contrast to the requirements of the OPMA. And so I think that should the commission wish to proceed with producing the letter, that it be clear that the input is being given to staff without consultation or agreement by the commission outside of a public meeting. I just think that, and I'll turn to Felicia, but my my OPMA questions are up of whether or not the commission reviewing a specific work product and quote agreeing to it potentially might run afoul of the OPMA.
So I'll speak to that. What I heard from the commission, or what I was envisioning, was that the commissioners were going to give input on Commissioner Downing's initial draft, but I was imagining that staff would facilitate all communications and on the actual work product. So I figured whoever was responsible for that would get 3 sets of comments separate and apart, and that there would not be any commissioner correspondence directly with each other, and certainly not any emails where the commissioners were talking or replying to each other. That would basically be the equivalent of this type of open meeting. So that's how I pictured it. So something to keep in mind when we're talking about timelines or whatever expectation you have is that it cannot be as simple as making this meeting the equivalent on emails. And so that's necessary to make sure that we're not running afoul of OPMA. But that is how I pictured it, that there would be staff that would each have to individually manage 3 commissioners' viewpoints.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Felicia. I'm going to rephrase or restate my motion, which I think is totally within OPMA, because just like the minutes that are generated by staff and the commissioners give input and then the commissioners approve said minutes after their input has been either accepted or rejected. This is a letter formulated with staff sent out to commissioners for their input, and then action is taken not through email, but rather at a future commission meeting. So with that, I restate my motion, which is to formulate, let's do this. My motion is to authorize the executive director to formulate suggested draft of information regarding the importance of getting a COVID-19 and distributing that draft to board commissioners for their input. And this draft would then be approved at a future commission meeting.
I'll second that.
So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you, commissioners. I think we're done with that action other item, and we've had public comment. And now we're going to move on to the advisory calendar, and what we have there is 2020 budget priorities, and our own Sam Gibney presenting.
Oh, one moment, I need to get my other where I can see my notes. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. The intent of today's meeting is to have a discussion with the commission regarding the budget priorities for 2022. I will note that I have several members of the leadership team with me here today, and they will be speaking to some of the slides. So the presentation today represents early thoughts and priorities that have been interpreted by the staff. And we are hoping today for your reactions, input, and guidance as we move forward with developing the draft 2022 budgets for your consideration. Next slide. Every year, we as staff return to the core documents that help to guide our planning. In particular, we look at the Port Strategic Plan. As you know, the Port Strategic Plan articulates 3 focus areas of creating economic opportunities, acting as an environmental steward, and creating and maintaining public community assets. Our planning and priority setting is based on the various values, including being accountable, sustainable, innovative, balanced, and engaged. Next slide. In addition to the strategic plan, staff relies on the goals and actions as identified in the Vision 2050 Action Plan. Next slide. So the following are staff's early thoughts and identification of priorities for next year's operating, non-operating, and capital budgets. Not everything presented here today will make it into the final budget. There may be priorities that the commission has that the staff has not yet planned for. Today is meant to be the first step in discussion as we all seek to build the resilience of the port in our community. Next slide. So our thinking and planning is also informed by the organizational assessment that was performed by Mall, Foster, and Longy earlier this year. As staff, we have already begun implementing some of the recommendations offered. Other recommendations will take time, resources, and the shared work of staff and the commission. Towards that end, we are planning on offering a budget that contains resources to create a 5-year strategic plan with a methodology to extract and refine an annual action plan. This would allow the port to operationalize the strategic plan and the Vision 2050 action plan. MFA recommends that we undertake a collaborative process to reconcile the strategic plan and Vision 2050 action plan. This would result in the aforementioned 5-year strategic plan. It would also incorporate multi-year financial forecast and capital investment planning. While that's going on, we must continue to operate our business units and make capital investments in a rapidly changing world. We must also reach agreement on how best to measure our performance and articulate our public value. Staff is also beginning the implementation of recommendations for a more strategic budgeting process, which we'll discuss later. We won't be able to make all of the changes overnight, but we expect that we can incorporate most of them within a couple years. And then last, but certainly not least, we will have 2 new commissioners next year. So we are working on onboarding materials, trainings, and opportunities for the new commission to come together in early 2022. Next slide. All of this distils to some key overall initiatives. First, the creation of a 5-year strategic plan. Second, an integrated Port Peninsula development plan. This plan will pull together the findings and recommendations from the Destination Waterfront Plan and Vision 2050, as well as other operational and strategic questions. It will literally seek to make sure that we are all on the same page. Some examples of things that we need to consider and make sure that they fit and work well together are the Marine Center building, or the Marina Office Administration and Partner Space, the overwater structure rehabilitation and potential uses, navigation and berthing maintenance, consideration of the lot request for port property, and other commercial development planning and marketing. We're also seeking to emphasize climate resilience in our budgeting. We're intentionally operationalizing climate resilience through port operations and initiatives by a series of initiatives contained in the staff budget. Examples of this include a fleet conversion to renewables with either zero emissions or other measures. Second is investments in clean energy infrastructure. For example, fast charging vehicle charging stations, or investments in solar power. All of this has to be, and you'll see this throughout the presentation today, all of this will be conducted in the circumstances of a continued response to the global pandemic and economic disruption. And as we've seen from our conversation earlier in this meeting, the pandemic is not over, its effects are not over, and how we conduct our business and what type of responses that we have to commit to that, as well as how that affects our ability to respond to other initiatives will continue to be at play throughout the year. Next slide. And with this, I'd like to introduce Lynn Fosher of the Marine Terminal.
Well, in reality, Len Fosher is on a much needed vacation. So Rudy Rudolph is going to step in for the Marine Terminal. So
Thank you, Rudy.
You betcha. All right, so the key initiatives for the Marine Terminal looking forward is to be involved in the Integrated Port Peninsula Development Plan and the Marine Terminal Long-Term Plan. We're looking at marketing for lay berth opportunities and the warehouse use as key opportunities for revenue in 2022. Also working ILWU 47A, as well as the rest of the maintenance staff at the port, working on a shared maintenance facility concept, which we've started talking about already this year. I recognize also that we are looking at a security grant for IT infrastructure, which is an ongoing thing that we've done every year at the Marine Terminal, and hopefully we'll be successful again in 2022. For navigation and berthing maintenance, looking at berth 1 repair, which initially was in this year's capital budget that started that process, we'll anticipate will be a carryover into next year. Navigation channel and turning basin issues are ongoing and under discussion with our environmental consultant and with the Corps, as well as Department of Ecology. Looking at grant funding requests for additional paving on the Marine Terminal, and still climate resilience, looking at fleet conversion to renewables, low carbon, zero emission vehicles on the Marine Terminal. And you're going to see that effort is going to actually be port wide, but we're going to be focusing on some of the, what can we do on those larger vehicles on the Marine Terminal. And of course, continued response to the global pandemic and economic disruption. One of the things that Len and I have talked about too is increasing our involvement in emergency preparedness and emergency response planning with the Marine Terminal, which has been ongoing for a couple of years now. So, next slide, please. All right, and TJ Quant is also on vacation today, and I'll be filling in for him. Next slide.
Hey, Rudy. Rudy, I jumped on.
Okay, excellent. Over to you, TJ.
Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. TJ Quant, Senior Harbor Manager. Pass on next slide. So I'm also here to talk about some of the Swantown's key initiatives for 2022. And one of our top initiatives is an integrated Port Peninsula development plan. Now that we have completed our destination waterfront plan, we will be looking at defining an integrated Port Peninsula plan. One of the aspects that came out of from destination waterfront is that there's an abundance of potential at the Port Peninsula, but limited space. So we're going to be looking at the potential internal needs matched with the community's input from destination waterfront, and continue to make progress for the future development. Some of the items that will be part of that plan will include a shared maintenance facility. This is to house our unified maintenance program and to move us out of lease space that we're currently occupying in Boatworks. Also, looking at our dry storage, we've seen an increased demand for dry storage, and we'll be working towards completing our storage near the boatyard and looking at potential locations to move our existing storage for future development as well. A few other key initiatives will include our boatyard stormwater system. This year, Ecology is working on defining a new boatyard permit and requirements for all boatyards across Washington state. For Swantown Boatworks, we will be waiting to see the new permit, and it will be critical that we are able to adhere to the stormwater sample requirements outlined in the permit. So one area that we do take samples at the boatyard is our boat washdown station. Our current oil trap filtration system has been becoming increasingly difficult to obtain replacement parts. So we will be looking to replace that system in order to ensure that we stay within compliance for the future permit. For navigation and moorage and maintenance, we have 2 pilings on the breakwater that have been identified in need of repair. So we'll be looking to complete these repairs in 2022. And we will be developing a programmatic approach to assessing all the additional pilings, docks, and also looking for routes to address the navigational channel dredging needs. As far as marine assets, the port currently maintains 4 vessels, including 1 harbor ops vessel, 2 harbor patrol boats, and our safe boat partnered with the Sheriff Department Integrity. Several of these vessels have pending costs associated with the asset or program. For example, the Harbor Patrol's vessel's clear coat has flaked off and it is in need of a new paint job. The Sheriff vessel Integrity needs a new fire monitor, and the outboards will need to be replaced in the next few years, which could cost upwards of $50,000. So we are going to be looking at these programs and assets to determine the best course of action for addressing these future repairs. Market rate analysis with the increases to maintenance costs and major increase to security and insurance. We're going to be taking a thorough look and examining where our rates fall across the Puget Sound along with our region to help determine where we are at in the boating market. Also to just help us make decisions moving forward through our budgeting process. Our marina operating software update. This last winter, the Swantown Department participated in a lean exercise with the State Auditor's Office, looking for to improve upon some of our office practices. One of the main items that was identified through the process was that our current software is making it difficult for our staff to be as productive as they could be. The Swantown team went through several month process identifying new candidates for replacement software, and we will be hoping to move with a goal to change over softwares this winter. That will both increase our operational efficiency and upgrade our level of customer service. For example, allowing online bill pay and online reservation requests. And lastly, our Wi-Fi and IT infrastructure upgrades. We're looking at a security grant and to enhance our fiber and IT infrastructure. This is a much needed improvement for our aging equipment and the current demand of the 2020s. Our service at the docks and upland facilities at Swantown will see upgraded services, and we will be replacing equipment to provide a greater amount of bandwidth down at the point. And of course, a continued response to the global pandemic and economic disruption. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Rudy.
All right, next slide, please. So at the airport, our key initiatives will be the continuation of our airport master plan update. That is ongoing, and we anticipate that we have our 3rd technical advisory committee meeting coming up here this month, and that process will go into the fall of 2022. We're also continue to work on the habitat conservation plan. I lost track, but I think we're in our 4th year now, working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the city of Tumwater to get us to a habitat conservation plan agreement. which will enable us to move forward in mitigation and protection of the threatened and endangered species, both at the airport and throughout the city of Tumwater. Continue to work on the Commercial Aviation Coordinating Commission and their work on the future of capacity in the state of Washington. And we continue to support the Washington State aviation agencies, both the Washington State Patrol, Washington State Fish and Wildlife, Washington Department of Natural Resources, and of course, WashDOT Aviation, who's located at the airport. WashDOT Aviation, we continue to work, we will be working, we continue to work with them, and we'll be working more in 2022 on their electric aircraft beta test site initiative. That'll be folded into our airport master plan evaluation and how we can best provide for some adaptation for those new technologies. Additionally, looking at alternative fuels opportunities. Generally, with general aviation airports, it's very difficult to implement alternative fuels because the high demand isn't there, but we'll be trying to look at opportunities there that perhaps provide incentives with our service providers at the airport to do alternative fuels. Also continue to work with our emergency response and preparedness, working with WashDOT, other state agencies, the Washington Military Department and Department of Homeland Security on what Olympia's role would be in any state or national emergency. Additionally, looking at an hangar expansion pilot project. One of the things that's been very evident in all of our surveys and in WashDOT's statewide surveys is the demand for hangars, and the challenge here has always been over the last few years the inability to break ground because of the endangered species. But on this pilot project, we're looking at trying to expand hangars on already developed asphalt, and how can we meet the building requirements to be able to provide extra hangar space for aircraft. And continued response to the global pandemic and economic disruption, as all of the other business units are doing as well. So, thank you.
Planning Commission, Alan Rowe, Business Development and Real Estate Director. So what we're looking at mostly in our planning and budgeting process is, as you've heard with the Marina and Marine Terminal directors also, is looking at this integrated Port Peninsula development plan, where this plays a role in real estate and on the business development side is really seeing what properties we have available, make sure that we're not competing with our own business units as we market those externally, and then also see how that incorporates into the destination waterfront plan and also the Vision 2050 plan as we move forward this next year for our marketing efforts. As you know, we've got the Panatoni efforts at Newmarket out by the airport. From a budget standpoint, we have not, factored anything into next year's budget for that, just to take a conservative approach for it. We do have potentially a lease that, I would hope to see come online in the tunes of about $300,000 a year in revenues for that, for a manufacturing facility that Panatoni is talking to. But again, we just do want to take a conservative approach to the budget, and if that comes to fruition, we'll gladly issue an amendment to see those revenues come in. We've got with that the habitat conservation plan that we're constantly keeping an eye on. With Rudy taking the lead on that, along with Lisa internally for the port, along with seeing how that plans into our efforts for development out there at Newmarket, and when that program's in then for potential revenues. As far as the lease option with Panatoni goes, we don't see payments from them for the lease option until we have completed the habitat conservation plan. We'll hopefully see some efforts toward the end of this year, but for sure next year, really a hyper focus on our Clean Water Center out there. We've got our cluster of buildings that we've been marketing, and then also we've got the lot area with the larger building that really serves two different uses. And we do want to kind of take a concentrated effort on that larger parcel, just primarily because it is fully impervious, which would mean there are no gophers anywhere on the site. And I think that could potentially be attractive to someone wanting to do something along Tumwater Boulevard there. In addition, we'll keep the focus on the cluster of buildings. We are in works with one potential tenant right now that is going through permitting process with the city of Tumwater. So I would anticipate that lease to come online at Clean Water next year also. But again, we taken that conservative approach and haven't factored those revenues in there. And then just constantly looking at our portfolio where potential surplus recommendations could come in to the commission, and then how we go about reinvesting those surplus properties into our portfolio to continue to produce revenue for the port. And as everyone says, we're doing this with COVID in the background and foreground. And really just trying to, keep the support to our tenants. Our tenants being in the business and, leasing properties from us are in a pretty tough spot. We've weathered this remarkably. They've weathered this remarkably. But just worry as this continues on, just a tougher position that they're in. Offering that assistance where we can, along with just seeing how that affects our business as well from a real estate standpoint. Thank you.
Greetings, Commissioner. This is Alicia Alvarez. I'm your Senior Maintenance and Facilities Manager. And I'm coming to you in our 9th month of the 2021 initiative, which was to unify our maintenance departments, bringing together the airport, the marina, properties, and projects into one department. So as we move into this, we're going to continue to set in 2022 that safety is our highest priority. I would suspect that you would expect no less of the port, that this initiative will be supervisor driven, working together with our technicians and this Port Safety Committee, as well as other department maintenance staff to continue to build a strong safety program. And as you know, it's a privilege to work in public service. That's why we want to hire, train, and retain our best workforce. As you understand, the best way to retain our workers is to offer them training opportunities that expand their skill base and build processes that help to build cross-training. Using the word resilience, this is one way to build great resilience within our maintenance program. Our technicians will be familiar with more than just one area and be able to reach across the different geographic locations for our different properties that we have that we're maintaining, as well as build their skills with equipment maintenance. What I appreciate about cross-training is that we build a port-wide accountability through our staff in maintaining our assets. We also want to be able to perform, even if it's with a simple thank you, job well done, that we reward our highest performers and look to retain these workers. Another initiative that we'll be working through in 2022 is that same, it's come up earlier, as a shared maintenance facilities design. This task is something that others have spoken to, but our department, the maintenance department, is ready to collaborate on this project into the future. The next initiative we have, which I think is the main initiative of almost any maintenance program, is taking care of our facilities, asset management and preservation. And in today's environment, it's a challenge to be proactive and move beyond break and fix and into a preventative and predictive mode. And I would say that we've just begun to set the pace with unifying our maintenance. And we also unify our maintenance through centralized maintenance management program, software program, which is the next bullet that's down. One part of our planning is that we want to move beyond just 1 year planning through the budget process, but into a 3 to 5 year maintenance plan that looks at all the port's assets and equipment and ways to be able to track that, which is through our computerized maintenance software program. This year alone, we put in more than 1,000 entries of our assets into this Manager Plus, which is our software program. And it gives us a quick access to the make, the model, the hours, the replacement parts. You know, for instance, we have 91 HVAC units that we maintain through the port. So we now know the cost of the filters, the time that we put into regular preventative maintenance, and the materials that is spent, so that we can track that and share that with properties. Key piece, which has come up as well, is climate resilience. And in the climate resilience, I think we're taking a bold initiative here, stepping into 2022, but looking even further to be able to replace our maintenance fleet with an electronic or hybrid vehicles. It's also a call to action to increase the number of vehicle charging stations at the port and on port properties. And this is a leadership role that the port maintenance team can help to take with the other departments as we set that standard. The next bullet here is the stewardship in community and public amenities. So as you know, public access is management of our extensive waterfront, our trails, our docks, our stormwater systems, and our property assets. It's throughout Thurston County, and we have a strong team to be able to be the stewards for these assets and continue to build our skill base so that we can move beyond outsourcing and bringing in outside contractors to insourcing and using our internal staff. I think the main bullet at the bottom, the continued response to the global pandemic and economic disruption. I think all of the port staff were all affected by this. One way that maintenance is affected is that the supply chain continues to make it difficult to be able to get replacement parts. For instance, right now, an HVAC unit, if we had to replace it, is a 3 to 5 month waiting period. So on behalf of the Unified Maintenance Team, we see our role as being part of the hub of the port. We're here for asset management, planning, process, strategy, and we feel like we're key to the overall success of the port. We are making the most of our people, the data that we have now available, our systems and our tools and skills and equipment. And if these last 9 months are any way of putting a stamp on making the change to a unified maintenance program, I think we've had great success, and I look forward to working with you into 2022. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jerry Sevier, the Administrative Services Director. So some of the key initiatives for administration and finance include new commissioner onboarding. As you know, we'll have 2 new commissioners next year, and so we'll be working on onboarding those 2. Another key initiative is to design and refine our strategic budgeting process. I think Sam will talk more on that in a few slides. The port applied for an IT cybersecurity and infrastructure grant based on a project of upgrading our current infrastructure and putting in some more security around cybersecurity. We have heard that the port has been granted that, but we haven't received official notification yet. So we're excited to work on that project. It will run across several departments, including the marine terminal, the marina, and administration. Another initiative is to enhance our public portal on our website for public access to documents. This is a public portal through our website that would provide public to be able to go in and get certain documents without having to request them through a public records request. Another key initiative is to refine and adopt financial measures. As the Commission is aware, we have been talking about this issue for quite a few years, and we had some recommendations from the Mall, Foster, and Alonji assessment that that's something that needs to move forward. And then finally, our Marine Center building, which includes the administration and marina office planning. We have been working on that for quite a few years, and a lot of was waiting for the Destination Waterfront initiative to go through and to give us guidance on that. So we continue to move that planning forward and hope to bring that forward next year with some definite plans. And with everyone else, the continued response to global pandemic and economic disruption, we have constantly made changes throughout the year, throughout the whole pandemic, including part of last year, for continuing to keep up to date on the guidelines that are required as a employer, and making sure that our staff understand what those guidelines are, and it changes all the time. So keeping on top of that. Next slide, please. Jenny Folia-Jones, our Communications, Marketing, and Government Affairs Senior Manager, is had another commitment this afternoon, so I'll be going over her bullets for Communications and Government Affairs. So some key initiatives for this department is the 100-year celebration. Yes, 100 years. We will be 100 years old come November of 2022. So we have a lot in store for next year, and begin planning that and implementing the plan. Jenny has also been active in state and federal funding requests last year, and will continue to move that forward again this year. We were successful in getting one of those, and we have not heard back on a few others. So we're still keeping our fingers crossed and hoping to continue to move forward with getting some federal funding. Again, the new commissioner onboarding, our Communications and Outreach and Government Affairs department will be assisting with that as well. And then this department just supports all of the different port initiatives, projects, and all of the departments in material creation and other things that are requested throughout the year. And again, the continued response to the global pandemic. Jenny has been very good about putting together different charts and graphics that help everyone understand what the rules are, and the signage that's been required, and all of that. So she'll continue to assist everyone with moving forward with the changes as they occur. And I think that's it for me.
Thanks, Jerry. Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Parks. I'm the Capital Investment Planning and Environmental Program Director. And if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to just briefly review for you some of our key initiatives in those three areas. So as we'll talk further through this budgeting process, one of the things that we're focusing on is trying to develop this multi-year capital investment plan, which takes a look not only at our capital needs, but also identifies and projects those larger maintenance and planning needs that have been mentioned by others, looking out into the future, so we can plan for those things on more than just an annual basis. Our initial target will be to take a 3 to 5 year look, but hopefully within the next few years, we hope to have a rolling 10-year plan that helps to guide our and inform future operating and capital budgets, and help the commission make solid decisions related to those things. From a planning perspective, we are supporting a variety of different programs that you've already heard mentioned, internal to the Port District. So the Integrated Port Peninsula Development Plan, the 5-year strategic plan, and then working with a bunch of others on the climate resilience piece. Externally, we also participate in other planning projects with other partner organizations. The one in particular listed here will be ongoing through 2022 is the Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary Long-Term Management Plan. And then from an environmental program, we will continue our remediation efforts at Cascade Pole. We have a 5-year sediment sampling project that we need to complete as part of our ongoing obligations at Cascade Pole. East Bay redevelopment continues to be a focus for the environmental department, and we hope to make some progress on the West Bay Butt Inlet situation, as mentioned before, with respect to the marine terminal, looking and working with our partners at the Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Ecology in terms of Butt Inlet and the sediment dredging issues that are pretty significant in that area. We also continue to provide a lot of regulatory compliance activities in support of the business units with our stormwater and environmental permits. And then we do have this focus, as has been mentioned, on sustainability and resilience. So we continue to support the business units, for example, with the Green Marine certification, the Clean Marina certification, and we hope to continue our participation with our other local governments in the region on climate change and sea level rise. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, I'm going to go through a little bit on the capital budget process at this point. And again, these are just staff's early thoughts and priorities. And the purpose of the presentation at this point is to convey these thoughts to the commission and really to get your feedback on whether or not we're on the right track. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some projects that will be carryover projects in the capital budget, and then identify a few that are also grant dependent. The carryover projects first, the Marine Center building, the administration and marina offices. That's a continuing project, as has been mentioned. We'll move forward with ongoing planning, design, and coordination with our various partners and stakeholders in that initiative. The RV resort, we've hit a little bit of a barrier. We had requested a text amendment to the zoning for, ordinance for the city of Olympia. And recently the Planning Commission made a recommendation that that text amendment not be approved. What that text amendment would have done would be, currently RV parks are allowed in the urban waterfront zoning district, but only adjacent to marinas and only for those people using the marina. So it's not open to just the general public. We had been seeking authorization to allow an RV park resort to be implemented without that prohibition and that restriction on the users themselves. We have upcoming on September 16th, a meeting with the City Council Land Use and Environment Committee. And so they will be considering the Planning Commission's recommendation at that meeting. And we are going to be providing some additional information from the Port District into that process for their consideration. But essentially, we are viewing this as an up in the air initiative in terms of whether or not we get that RV text amendment or not. The shared maintenance facility was mentioned. That is a carryover project. I think the idea is to continue with the site selection, design, engineering, and permitting, as well as bid preparation for that type of a new combined maintenance facility to replace some of our existing facilities at the boatworks and the marine terminal that are in need of being replaced. The two grant dependent projects are the Port Cybersecurity Infrastructure Grant that Jerry just mentioned. Again, we believe we've been awarded that, but we don't know for sure. And so that is something that will be pending. The other application that is outstanding that we've submitted that is not yet, we've not been told whether or not we've received that, is a MARAD Port Infrastructure Development Plan program grant for the marine terminal, which would allow us to do some rehabilitation to berth 1 that was identified in a previous assessment, and to do about 21 acres of repaving on the marine terminal.
Great. I'd like to thank the leadership team for all speaking. Thank you for, there's detailed descriptions of initiatives and possible projects for 2022. I'd like to kind of widen our scope back a little bit more now, talk about the budgeting process. And I'm gonna first talk about the existing processes, how we've been doing it. And it starts about around now, where we have a work session like this, and we have discussions with the commission in a less formal way about the priorities for the upcoming year. Within a staff, put together a preliminary budget, and we have budget meetings to make sure that the commission understands what's in the budget, provides input, and ultimately direction for us to develop an actual draft budget. And we present that to the commission. They hold public hearings and then eventually adopt the budget. From there, then we usually have a retreat in either late January, early February, where staff then says, okay, commission, this is the priorities that were identified. This is the budget that was given to them. And here's the work plan of how we're going to actually accomplish the work with some major milestones, particularly identifying which ones will be coming back for commission action. And then throughout the year, kind of April through July, we provide progress reports in quarterly financial reports and updates on specific projects. So that's how we've been doing it currently. And then I'm going to go to the next slide and turn it over to Lisa to talk about a more strategic process as recommended by Mal Foster and Longy.
Thank you, Sam. So this overall process just reorients a lot of the different tasks that Sam just mentioned into an order that puts some of the work planning and the analysis in advance of the actual adoption of the budget, as opposed to waiting until the budget has been adopted to make those, to develop those work plans. So First of all, this particular process assumes that the port has already completed the 5-year strategic plan and the annual action plan that Sam described at the beginning of the presentation. And again, that as a reminder, that will operationalize the existing strategic plan and Vision 2050. And that helps to just the port reconcile all of the great work that's already been laid out through those various processes, and helps to identify and articulate very clearly what the priorities and the general timeframes during which the various projects are anticipated to occur. So in the proposed strategic budgeting process, the first few steps are meant to track the port's progress on implementing the various priorities that have been established in that 5-year strategic plan and the annual action plan. So you're reviewing the priorities and progress in the context of any changed conditions that may be existing, and then determining if those priorities need to remain the same or if they need to change in advance of and thinking about the next year's upcoming budgeting process. So based on the outcomes of the first retreat, where we look at the progress reports and develop and analyze the revised priorities, if there are any, staff prepares an updated strategic plan and the annual action plan if necessary. And then again, that is intended to guide the development of the upcoming year's budget and work plans. So staff then uses those updated priorities to develop financial forecasts and the implications of those priorities. And at the second retreat that's identified here later in August, early September, we review those forecasts and the implications of those different priorities with the commission to understand if we are on track or if we need to make some further tweaks to the budgeting process. So this allows the commission to review those projected implications against those priorities and further refine them as we are beginning to again adopt the official budget review process. So throughout those early steps, staff is continuing to work on preparing draft operating and capital budgets and modifying them as the commission refines the strategic priorities from the 5-year strategic plan and the annual action plan, with the goal of having the preliminary budget ready for the commission's review in the fall and being ready to present the final draft budget at the public hearing and adopting those final budgets within the timelines established by state law, which is the end of November. This process is throughout the year. The reporting that the staff currently does for the commission will continue, but again, it really is intended to provide some opportunity for the commission to give direction around priorities and work plans before the budget is adopted, as opposed to afterwards. Next slide. So did you want to do this one, Sam?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. So we'll be going over the detailed calendar as you're used to here in the coming weeks, and this is kind of just a preview for that. So the commission will be receiving a copy of the preliminary budget by September 29th. From there, we'll have some commission study sessions, individual commissioner briefings if requested. Several of you like to have that kind of one-on-one time and really ask very specific questions. Then what we're also hoping to implement is recommended in the memo from John Carter is a budget change request form. And in specific, so as we talk about the tax levy, et cetera, that these forms would be filled out by individual commissioners. They would then be compiled and put into a packet for the meeting on probably the October 25th meeting. And then the commission votes on the individual budget change request. And we're hoping that this will add to the transparency and be able to allow for the commission to have thoughtful consideration of each other's viewpoints and requests. It also helps to provide a clear direction to the staff of which changes the commission would like to see. After all that, we'll prepare the draft budget, and the draft budget is published at the end of the month in October. Public hearing is then advertised. We have the public hearing on the 8th of November, and then the commission takes action for approval and adoption on the 22nd of November. So again, that's just a preview for you, but also a introduction to the concept that we're going to be including these budget change request forms. And we're still developing those forms, and we'll be getting them out with the copy of the budget when we send those out at the end of this month. Next slide. And that was a whole lot of information. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Chairman Downing to see how he would like to proceed.
Well, thank you, Sam. Yeah, I agree. That was a great presentation, a lot of information. You know, I've got a few questions, but as usual, I will defer to my fellow commissioners for questions and comment. Commissioner Zita or Commissioner McGregor, who would like to lead off?
Go ahead, Commissioner McGregor.
I went first last time. I'll leave the floor to you. Thank you.
So I want to thank staff for the information you've shared. I also read the consultant's report, and I found that very useful. And items that the consultant recommended accompany our budget considerations include 5-year accounts for each business unit, including debt payments, and 5-year projections for each business unit, including debt. I trust we will be seeing that sometime soon.
That is really what we're hoping to accomplish with the 5-year planning process. So while we are internally working on those, one of the things that I think that has been I'd say lacking in the Port of Olympia's process is this marrying up of what exactly are the priorities of the organization, and really creating that strong alignment with between the commission and the staff. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish for next year. So we say these are the things that we're really going to both the projects that we're going to work on, the initiatives, and then matching our business unit planning to that as well.
So it sounds like we're not going to see those 5-year accounts and projections this year. That's a disappointment. I would like to see reports on our adopted financial measures. I know that you're thinking about new ones, but the commission adopted financial measures in 2015, and we do need to see our performance on those adopted financial measures in order to make informed decisions.
Of course, and we do that on an annual basis, as has been the practice. And so there's only been one financial measure that, quite frankly, we really can't make sense of the math on, but we do provide those and have to the commission on a regular basis.
So I'm not going to ask for staff feedback on every point, but I do have a number of points and questions to make, and I'll indicate when I need feedback. Thank you. Let's see. So we're budgeting for community planning work. Capital Lake Deschutes Estuary, that's great. Sea level rise, climate change. We should keep in mind in our presentations and in our planning that these are not things we're doing in isolation. These are things we're doing with our community partners. We will also have opportunities to share funding with community partners. In particular, we've made a commitment as a commission to share funding on the sea level rise process, on the Capital Lake Deschutes Estuary process. And I hope that we will make a commitment, we'll put our money where our mouth is on the climate change mitigation. Let's see. Rudy, on slide 8, there was discussion of this shared maintenance facility. Is this a new building?
Yes, Commissioner, that will be combining the 35-year-old plus marine terminal maintenance facility. And hopefully the plan is to eliminate the maintenance facility currently in the boat works area and then combine those two together into one joint facility. And yes, a new building.
And are you looking at doing this on the marine terminal or over by the boat works?
Well, in our initial discussions with the ILWU, we're trying to come up with a creative way so that this facility will, for lack of a better description, straddle the fence, if you will, so that ILWU will have their facility on the marine terminal and the non-ILWU remainder of the port maintenance will be outside the fence.
That sounds a little tricky.
It is more than a little tricky,
Yeah,
but
thank you.
I'm up to the task.
I'm sure you are. The boatworks location is less vulnerable to sea level rise. As you know, from the first 2 rounds of sea level rise planning we did, the marine terminal will be flooded in 30 years. And I don't think it makes sense to build a new building out there. So East Bay is not going to flood quite as soon. If you're going to build a new building, you're not going to lose it as quickly there. And I'm sure you know that.
Yes, Commissioner, the challenge is obviously we have 2 constituents groups to deal with here, and we've just started that dialogue. So we've got miles to go before we sleep on this one.
Yeah. And then similarly for berth 1, looking at berth 1 repair, berth 1 is in bad shape. And berth 1 is also in the highly vulnerable flooding area. We should do a cost benefit analysis on just decommissioning berth 1 instead of spending a lot of money on repairing it, because it's not going to be around long. And if we decommission it safely and cleanly now, we won't have to worry about it when it floods in a couple of decades. So that should be part of our cost benefit analysis, which I hope we'll be doing. Fleet conversion, there are a couple of managers who talked about fleet conversion to electrics and hybrids. That's great. That's consistent with our state's initiatives for reducing carbon emissions. It's consistent with the Commission's direction that we'd like to contribute to the Thirst and Climate Mitigation Plan. But if we're looking at buying great big equipment, great big new equipment that's electric or hybrid, like new log loaders, we need to do a cost benefit analysis. If it's big expensive equipment that's going to be used somewhere that will be flooding soon, it does not make sense to invest in it, even if it's nice hybrid electric stuff. We shouldn't be replacing expensive equipment that we're not going to be able to use for long. And we shouldn't be using the fleet conversion as a way to get new equipment that we don't already have. So those are just guidelines.
Thank you, Commissioner.
For us to be smart with the public's resources.
Thank you.
I have a question for Rudy and or TJ about navigational dredging, nav channel dredging. It was mentioned a couple of times. What are you looking at and how much? I mean, last time we looked at nav channel dredging, Army Corps of Engineers pays for it, but we pay for disposal upland of the contaminated dredge spoils, which costs millions of dollars. Is that what we're looking at?
Well, I can speak to the marine terminal side, the navigational channel and the turning basin. And we're currently in the evaluation stage of that. Obviously I mean, I can't tell you how many hours of meetings I've already been in and you know, we could take a lot of time here talking about the challenges and the details with Department of Ecology and the MOCA site, the Corps of Engineers. So right now, there is no plan. Right now, we're in this evaluation and understanding what our options are moving forward.
Okay, just two more comments. The sheriff's vessel integrity needs $50,000 in repairs. I think the sheriff's office should pay for that, not the port. And Airport Master Plan Advisory Committee, the neighbors around the airport should be on that advisory committee. To my knowledge, the Salmon Creek Basin Neighborhood Association has not been invited to participate, and they should.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have more, but I'm sure Commissioner Downing is going to say, wait, it's somebody else's turn.
Thanks, Commissioner Zita. Yeah, sure. We'll give you a little more time later on. Thanks. We'll just go around the table. Commissioner McGregor.
Yeah, I want to thank staff for the presentation. I just had a couple of comments and mine will be very brief. On slide 24, talks about the existing process. And so this is the existing process for the 2022 budget that we're going to be going into. So perhaps we should put that in the title just so it's clear to everyone what that process is going to be for 2022. And then when we get into the strategic on slide 25, it talks about the recommended budget process for 2023, which is actually the process that will happen in 2022 for 2023. So I just think maybe that. The other thing is I'm interested to see the request form that'll be back by October 15th, and I'm hoping we get adequate time to work on filling that out and sending it back. My question is, September 29th is a Wednesday. Is that when the budget is going to be, will get to us on Wednesday, the couple of days after our meeting on the 27th?
Yeah.
And I hope we have more than one or two commission study sessions prior to having the form back by October 15th, which is basically about 2 months later. So I want to really have time to have that presented. And that's about it. I appreciate everything you've given to us. I've got lots of more questions, but I'll send an email to the executive director with my comments. And because I think it's early on right now, and we'll see more as the plans develop and as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I'll start by saying it was a good packet. I'm glad that you brought in some consultants, Sam, to reevaluate how we go about setting budgets and setting targets. And I agree with Commissioner Zita. It's important to look out more than just 1 year. So I look forward to a 5-year look as well, on a rotating basis. I think that's so important. I got various comments, and I'll just pretty much fly through them by business unit. The marine terminal. I personally am interested in some work on berth 4 and what we can do with that, and what it needs and so forth. So I think berth 4, it's quite the eyesore, and also there's some possible uses of that going forward. So I'd like to see some attention being paid to that. I'm concerned that the Weyerhaeuser contract may or may not get finalized in 2021. So therefore it becomes subject matter for the budget for 2022. So hope that that's included. I'd love to see, while we're on the subject of the marine terminal, and I recently got back from vacation, and it was a boat vacation. I think I counted 7 different container ships parked on the waters in different places. And so, I think some unloading is better than 0 unloading. I've heard the container crisis is going to go into 2022. So, I would explore, I'd like to see at least a few phone calls to our friends up north, ports up north, whether or not we can mobilize our current crane for some slow unloading of a small container ship, because they go from the container ship to a tractor trailer, appropriately configured, and so on and so forth. I know the crane can lift containers. So, I don't know why these ships are parked out there, but I think it bears some investigation as potential work for our marine terminal. Swantown, I agree with Commissioner Zita. I don't know why, we have, it's not ownership, but what's the word I'm looking for? Maintenance of the integrity, I just don't get that. And, so I'd be happy to give that boat back to the sheriff's office. Then also in Swantown area, and it's something that I just haven't been able to get involved in, but a lot of people talk to me about any kind of transportation to and from North Point, which would assist in tourism and visitors to downtown, all the visiting boaters we have in the summertime. So, I would hope that TJ would be interested in pursuing some sort of transportation methodology, whether it be bus service or bicycles or electric vehicle or what have you. That's Swantown. I think on the airport, I love your idea of examining additional hangar space to meet the demand, Rudy. And I'm so glad that you're involved in that Commercial Aviation Coordinating Commission, and I look forward to additional reports. And, even though the Port of Olympia said thumbs down to any kind of help as a regional airport, there are other things that maybe we can be involved in with that and the goals of that commission. When we talk about the unified maintenance, Alicia, it's so nice to hear you present to us. I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to have a cup of coffee together, but I like all the things that I've heard about the unified maintenance. I especially like the conversion to electric hybrid fleet. I think that sets an example of the port as an environmentally conscious agency. I'm a personal user of the boat launch kiosk, and so I love the state-of-the-art electronics going on there. It's totally easy to use and quick, lightning quick. Same with the fuel dock. I mean, the transaction is just at the highest level, so I appreciate all that. And then finally, we haven't talked much about solar initiatives, but really, we've talked about it as a commission for a few years, but how can we get involved in that and make more of a footprint? Because I think that that's, the wave of the future between electric vehicles and solar energy and so forth. I think we should be involved in that. So I'd like to see that. And then finally, on the capital budget, I'm still supportive of the Marine Center and the admin building and the maintenance facility. And the RV resort, the only thing I took of note was that Lisa was talking about an exemption to the existing rules. Can we still have an RV park that is totally tied to marina visitors, and what's the likelihood or viability of that? Of course, it'd probably be smaller, but maybe we could still go forward with something with that. So good presentation. And of course, the centennial celebration, I think that's really important. And it's just important to take time and look at the positive things, like the Port of Olympia has been in existence for 100 years. I think it's been a great 100 years, and it's quite the legacy and the historical footprint of this whole community. So I appreciate that. I look forward to seeing that come forward. Okay, that's it. So commissioners, Commissioner Zita, you had a couple more?
Yeah. So Commissioner Doney, you mentioned the Port of Olympia's legacy and historical footprint. And of course, one of our major legacy and historical footprints is the contamination. on the land and in the sediment. And one of our primary duties is to clean that up. We heard a suggestion from the executive director a couple years ago about funds that might be available for that. We haven't heard any more about that since. I know Matka is always, there's never enough of Matka to go around, but we need to prioritize cleanup before the marine terminal floods. And this has got to be on our list. If it's not even on our list of priorities, it's never going to happen. Cleanup has got to be a priority. People, the port was established 100 years ago to provide public access to the waterfront for the people. The people want to be able to enjoy the waterfront. That means getting in the water with their kids and their dogs, and that water's not safe to get in. And we have a responsibility to clean that up. I'm glad to see that the port is applying for grants again. We had a hiatus there. We should be applying for broadband grants. The broadband action team has team members who are doing a good job of this. The Nisqually tribe is the shining star that we have to look up to. And we should be prioritizing broadband, but not doing it alone. We should be doing it with our regional partners. I think my other fellow commissioners agree that that should be a priority because I proposed that task to the POCAC and you agreed on that. So let's not lose sight of that. That is one of the most important ways we can move the port into the 21st century and help our community economically, environmentally, and small businesses, families, school kids, emergency services. Broadband should be top on our list. I see there's new IT infrastructure, some of it grant funded. That's great. I have a question about who's doing it. I don't need the answer right now, but I want to remind staff that both our consultants and Commissioner McGregor have recommended that we review and improve our contracts process. We've been promised a report on this for really all year. And we should get that report and we should be reassured that any new IT contracts are going out for bid properly. Let's see, Rudy, on slide 13 or 14, you mentioned a hangar expansion project. And I drive down old highway 99, south end of Capitol Boulevard pretty often. And there's been an 8,500 square foot hangar for lease for over a year down there. So why do we need a hangar expansion project if we have a great big hangar for lease?
That's not our hangar. That's a privately owned hangar and has been recently leased. They've had that sign up forever, and I don't know why they haven't taken it down, but that hangar has been leased to another fixed base operator who's operating out of there. But we don't own that hangar. That's privately owned. Our
Okay, good to know.
expansion area would be to add on to our existing rows of hangars.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
You bet.
Let's see. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioner McGregor, do you have any, before we turn to public comment, do you have any additional questions or comments?
No, thank you for checking.
Okay. Well, thanks. Next, we have a public comment on advisory item. And of course, the advisory item is what we've been talking about, the 2022 budget priorities. So I'm going to turn to my handy dandy list of attendees and see if anybody would like to give public comment. Please signify by raising your virtual hand. Any public comment at this time regarding our first budget discussion?
I know that last time we had a budget discussion, Mr. Langens emailed all of us and said, hey, I tried to raise my hand and you didn't see me. So let's just double check on that. He is attending.
Well, Dennis, Anyway, I can't get Dennis to respond. I think he's muted. Oh, now he's got a hand up. So Dennis, are you on? Would you like to say something?
I'm touched that you wanted to hear from me. Can you hear me?
Hi, Mr. Langens, please go ahead.
Am I coming through?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Okay, well, I really had a very brief comment. I was concerned about Commissioner Zita's comment about focusing on the cost of this channel dredging. I mean, if several years ago, it was estimated that the costs were in the $100 million area with 22 million or so for the port. And that had been at one point put on as something for the future. Then it was dropped many years ago, and it's nothing's ever been done since then. And so that seems to be a rather material area to have some focus on. So I hope that was something will be brought forward in that area. I took a quick look through John Carter's report, and I forget, it was somewhere around page 4, where he made some comment about, well, for public consumption, let's give them a general idea, but not any numbers. That didn't give me great comfort, I have to tell you. I think, you know, we've had a lot of that stuff already in our history, so I hope the public gets some numbers. And I do have a concern about, you know, the financial reporting, financial measures. I mean, the fact that your key financial measure of loss or profit before the tax levy was taken off the basic financial quarterly reports. And so it seems at odds with your stated policy. One of your stated financial measures has been removed apparently without consultation with the commission. So I'd be curious if you could give any feedback in that area. So anyway, I mean, I think what I hear about, you know, the planning process seems to make a lot of sense, and I hope you keep that up, but I hope there's a candor in disclosing costs to the public. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Langens. Anybody else like to give public comment on the advisory item of 2022 budget priorities? Okay, commissioners, would you like to respond to Mr. Langens in any way?
I'll start off. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Langens. Appreciate you keeping an eye on us, keeping us honest, as we all are honest people. But thank you for providing your comments for tonight, and I'll look forward to further comments as the process moves forward.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Zita.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Langens. Boy, I didn't remember those big numbers for the dredging costs. So it'll be interesting to see what staff come up with this time around. Yeah, that line in Mr. Carter's report advising that staff tell the public what we're going to do, but not what it's going to cost. I disagree. We do need to know the numbers. Or we wouldn't be entirely honest, would we? And of course, financial reporting, we do need to have all financial measures reported on. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Thanks, Mr. Langens, for your comments. I'm sure that on the bright side, we're moving towards a 5-year rolling projection for activities at the port. So I'm sure we'll hear well in advance of any dredging needs. And the other thing is first of all, Mr. Carter is a consultant, so they're free to, write what they want to write. And, we pay them overall for their product. Obviously, there can be a line or two that a person might not agree with, but I have to just say that probably of all the people that follow the port, you're the most financially rigorous. And it could be that Mr. Carter was trying to say, make the budget understandable to the public. Don't muddy the waters with, for example, 27 pages of numbers, which commissioners are expected to look at. In the financial statement, I recall it's about 27 or 28 pages. So that statement could be taken one of two ways. Okay, with that, we've come to the end of our meeting. Thank you, commissioners and staff, for all this great work and great discussion. I think we covered a lot of ground in some very important areas. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks all. See you next week.